Now, quick question. Do you think God knew what he was doing? Do you think Paul's great-grandparents understood what God was doing? Very possibly not. And so therefore, we have two things. We have faith. Faith is trusting God that he knows what he's doing. And number two, we have prophecy, where God says over and over and over, see, I know what I'm doing. I'm in charge. I know who you are, and I'm doing this for a reason. I said I do this 4 times. Here's number 3. 3 blind mice. 3 blind mice. See how they run? See how they all ran after the farmer's wife. The farmer's wife was a woman by the name of Mary Tudor. Mary Tudor married a fellow by the name of Philip II from Spain. Mary Tudor was the only child of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, who was also Spanish and didn't speak English, by the way, which is really hard on a communication between husband and wife, but neither here nor there. They then, as you remember, got divorced, and he married Mr. and Mrs. Boleyn's daughter, Anne. And so Mary was kind of shunted off to the side and kind of forgotten about. And eventually, Jane Seymour had the son that Henry VIII was looking for. And she then died shortly thereafter. But Edward then became Edward VI. After Henry VIII died, Edward VI became king. And during that time, there was a great purifying of the church. People were called Puritans as they studied how God intended that to be. But Edward VI died when he was still a teenager. So now what do we do? And so they chose his half-sister, Mary, who was married to one of the wealthiest people in all of Europe, had lots and lots of farms. This was before the Industrial Revolution, so they didn't have factories, you had farms, and he had lots of land, and she began to re-implement the church from Rome and get rid of these Puritans and these people that were trying to make these purifications of the church, and she began to attack them, she began to kill them, and she became known as Bloody Mary because of the people that she killed. And Mr. Fox wrote a book about Fox's Book of Martyrs as to how they were tortured, and many of them escaped, and they went to a place called Geneva. And in Geneva, while they were there, they said, you know, nobody's ever translated the Bible into English. It would be good if people could read the book in English. And so while they were there, they translated the Bible into English. And John Calvin said, you know, it'd be good if you could find it. And so let's just number each one of the verses. And so while they were there in the Geneva Bible, they identified John 3:16 so that you could find it. Or Jeremiah 29:11 so that you could find it. And from that Bible came all kinds of release, development in art and freedom. And that's what Shakespeare read. And that's what John Bunyan read when he wrote Bunyan's Pilgrim Progress. And because of the way that they were chased out of England, eventually came to America. That's the picture of Brewster holding the Geneva Bible in his lap because it was against the law to read it in England. And he came to America to found a country based upon those principles. There were some folks that stayed behind. Hugh Latimer, Thomas Cranmer, he wrote the book of prayer, the Common Book of Prayer. There was Nicholas Ridley, and Bloody Mary named them all 3 to death. And you can go to that same building across from Blackwell's bookstore there in Oxford, and you can see the spot where they were burned at the stake. And where Hugh Latimer said to Ridley, as they're lighting the fire, he said, "Be of comfort, Master Ridley. Play the man. For we shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England as I trust shall never be put out. Because of us standing for righteousness, it shall light a candle that shall light the entire globe." With that, they were burned up. Now, if you were to put a microphone under Brother Ridley's lips while he's burning, you would say, "Is this a good program?" But I ask the question again. Did God know what he was doing? Was God in control? How else would he have gotten all of those people in one spot at one time to write a Bible that changed the world? He knew it was happening, but in the midst of it, if we don't understand that he loves us and he has our best interests at heart, then we'll say, why can't I have candy for dinner? And he has to sit there and think, you don't understand. You don't understand what I'm doing. Number 4, it was Yom Kippur. It was 1973. Israel was being surrounded by its neighbors, and all of their military folks were on high alert. It had taken a few weeks to get that way. So the United States said, what are you all up to? And, oh, no, we're not up to anything. And Israel said, what are you up to? It said, oh, we're not up to anything. Why are you bringing all these troops to our border? Well, we're just practicing. So except Russia was supplied all the military personnel for all of them. What are you up? No, they're not going to do anything. And so on the evening of Yom Kippur, when the Israeli families sat down to dinner that night to celebrate the Feast of Atonement, they were attacked from all sides. And in the first 2.5 hours, the entire Israeli Air Force was destroyed. And now the tanks begin to roll as they begin to destroy this little country. What do you do when you're in trouble? To whom do you turn? What is the standard of righteousness? I don't care if you're Kuwait or any place. You get run over, who's going to treat you fairly? There's a place called America. And go to my ears on the phone pleading with the President of the United States, I need help, I need help, I need an Air Force, I need an Air Force. He tries to explain, you see this Constitution that Bob spoke about last night? It doesn't give me authority to do that sort of thing. If America's going to do that, then it's going to have a declaration of the Congress. Congress is not in town, and she says, we're going to disappear. And so the President of the United States got on the phone, and he called as good a friend as America ever had. He happened to be the leader of the nation of Iran, who had the same airplanes that the Israelis had. And he said, he asked the Shah of Iran if he would give his Air Force to Israel, and he consented to do it with no promise of replacement or remuneration, and sealed his fate with the Muslim mullahs. As he then, the Israeli pilots came over, they knew how to fly these planes, and they turned back the tide of history, and Israel survived. Didn't make any difference. The Shah knew he put his trust and confidence in the United States. Trust them, rely on them. But in 1976, we chose a new president. And this fellow was an interesting cat. Because he tried to explain, as these revolutionaries were taking power in Iran, that these were Shiites, and all of the Muslim countries of the Middle East said, don't let that happen. You let that happen, they'll undermine all of us. Those are bad folks. And then the dear man from Georgia explained to them that we all worship the same God. And they were all the same. And he explained Islam to them. And then when the Shah, understanding what was going to happen, he refused to concede. And so the President of the United States went out on the lawn and said, we think the Shah should step down. This man who at time we got as low as 8 votes in the United Nations. And Iran was always with us. And they said, well, who's going to take power? Well, there's this illiterate, cross-legged man that's been expelled from every country in the Middle East because he's a crazy man, wants to kill everybody. He lives in a backyard of a townhouse. He sits out there on the grass in Paris. And our United States ambassador, speaking on the administration on behalf of America, stood up in New York and said, we think Khomeini might be a saint. With that, the Shah got in his airplane, took an urn of soil, and flew off to Anwar Sadat's Egypt, the only nation that would accept him, piloting his own plane. And there he landed, sealing the fate for Anwar Sadat as well. And so, during that time, chaos sets in. Fortunately, most of the people in this room never have experienced what happens when there is no government. People drive around. They do whatever they want. They steal what they want. They rape whoever they want. They shoot guns through the windows. They ride around on the hoods of the cars and shoot the dogs or shoot the children, do whatever they want.